Welcome to What She Said, the heartbeat of Canadian women's voices, with me, your host, Candice Sampson. Here, we dive deep into the raw, unfiltered stories and triumphs of women from coast to coast. This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement where empowerment and education collide and where mansplaining is shown the door. We're here to celebrate, uplift, and echo you. So get cozy, tune in, and let's embark on this journey together, exploring the rich tapestry of women's lives, their battles and victories, right here on What She Said. So, did you get a chance to witness the stunning aurora borealis this past weekend? Unfortunately, where I live was under a blanket of clouds, but the photos that have been shared are simply breathtaking. And I find it fascinating how recent celestial events, from the full solar eclipse to the aurora borealis, are captivating us all, bringing together people from all walks of life in awe. And keep your eyes on the skies, because on June 3rd, we're in for another treat with a planetary alignment of 6 planets. But until then, I've got plenty to keep us grounded and engaged right here on Earth. Here's what's coming up on today's show. We're starting off with Candice Batista, an esteemed environmental journalist and one of Canada's top eco-advocates. In her new book, Sustained, Creating a Sustainable House Through Small Changes, Money-Saving Habits, and Natural Solutions, Candice offers practical steps to make our lives and homes more sustainable. It's a guide that promises to ease the burden on our planet while padding our wallets. And Brodie is here with her latest entertainment picks. She'll take us through the lyrical drama We Grown Now, set in the infamous Cabrini Green projects and After the Flood, a British murder mystery that doubles as a call to action on climate change. Plus, she gives us a sneak peek at Shard Lake, a unique series set during Henry VIII's reign. Joining me from the world of political satire is Clare Blackwood, a brilliant mind behind Canada's top satire site, The Beaverton, and the creator of Late Night in Canada. Clare will share her insights into the nuances of political satire, her experiences with backlash, and her creative inspirations. We'll also explore the transformative power of self-compassion with Steph Kelly from Copper Thread Coaching. Steph's unique coaching style empowers her clients to find a balance between achieving their goals and maintaining their mental health, a particularly poignant topic for this week's celebration of mothers. Wrapping up, Willie Poll, a proud Métis author and advocate for Indigenous education, returns to the show. Willie's latest children's book, My Little Agochida, is an Indigenous lullaby that beautifully captures the deep love and hopes Indigenous parents have for their children. So relax and let's take care of you today with today's lineup of enriching discussions, right here on What She Said. In a world where the call for sustainability grows louder each day, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of what needs to be done. Enter Candice Batista and her new book, Sustained, Creating a Sustainable House Through Small Changes, Money-Saving Habits, and Natural Solutions. This eco-living handbook simplifies the journey towards a more sustainable lifestyle, starting within the walls of our own homes. Candice, an award-winning environmental journalist and one of Canada's leading eco-advocates, distills her extensive knowledge into practical, accessible advice that promises not just to benefit our planet, but also to save us money. Welcome to What She Said, Candice.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Candice, fellow Candice.
Yes, Candices Unite. I love this. And I think, what's going to hook people from that introduction more than saving the planet is saving money in this economy. Let's face it, we all want to save some dollars. So your book, Sustained, is about making sustainable living accessible to everyone. Can you share a couple of simple changes people can make at home that have a big impact?
Sure. So a lot of people ask me this question. I think the idea first is to understand the kind of waste that you're producing on a daily basis. It's hard to choose an area in your home to start making change when you don't really understand where most of your garbage is coming from. So I always tell people the first thing to do is a DIY garbage audit. What this does is over a certain period of time, usually in the summer is a good time to do this. For the span of a month, you're going to collect all of the garbage you would typically put in the recycling bin or the black bin, the garbage bin. So not the organic waste, just those two things. You're going to collect those things in a box in the garage for a month. Then on a nice day, you're going to put out a big piece of tarp and you're going to basically categorize all your waste into piles. So you might have a big pile of, let's say, frozen plastic food packaging. You might have a big pile of condiments like peanut butter, jams, those kinds of things. Maybe you have lots of paper and flyers. Maybe it's a lot of skincare products that come in, mostly plastic packaging. So this gives you a really good bird's eye view as to where most of your garbage or recycling is coming from. And that's where you kind of start. So if you notice, wow, I'm going through a lot of frozen food. So bags and bags of frozen foods. Can you look to perhaps shop at a farmer's market for those foods that are unpackaged? Or can you buy them in the grocery store, unpackaged, fresh, and freeze them yourself? We need to get back to kind of freezing and canning our foods, especially with the amount of food that the average Canadian throws out. So when you look at that garbage, now you say, okay, next up is condiments. I buy a lot of condiments, plastic, peanut butter, ketchup, all those kinds of things. Can you buy those in glass? Glass is wonderful because it can be infinitely recycled over and over again. That's not the case with plastic. Glass is more intensive from a manufacturing standpoint, but its end result, so what happens to it at the end of its life, we can actually reuse those things over and over again for food storage, for freezing your foods, that kind of stuff. But I think ultimately, once you do that, typically the kitchen is the place where we tend to waste the most, when we bring the most packaging in, and we tend to throw out a lot of food. $1,800 the average Canadian family throws away every single year. To put that into context, 2.4 million potatoes are thrown away daily in Canada. So we want to save money. Saving money in the fridge is there's very easy ways to do that. And you will see those savings on your pocketbook. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a huge number that we're throwing out, and also money that we're losing.
Yeah.
Many people assume that going green is going to be expensive. So how does your book help debunk this myth, offering money-saving sustainability tips for the household?
Well, that is a huge misconception, a massive myth. It absolutely does not cost you more money. I think social media has played a real part in the negative voice around that it costs too money, because you have lots of influencers showing expensive eco-friendly products. Those kinds of things like reusable straws and all, those kind of innocuous things that we tend to buy a lot of. We don't need any of that stuff in our home. In fact, the most sustainable things that you have in the home are the things you already own. And when you think of something like paper towel, when you think of how much money the average family wastes on paper towel, which is a single-use item, we can't reuse it over and over again. So yes, when you stop using paper towel and you opt for, let's say, Swedish cloths or rags, you might have a small cost up front. But honestly, if you go into your kitchen cabinets right now and you look through your drawers, I guarantee you have a ton of tea towels, a ton of cloth things, napkins, all kinds of kitchen cloth that you could actually use in your home. You also don't have to rush out and buy pretty mason jars that have every matching that you see on Instagram. Use the glass jars. I bet you right now you have pickles in your fridge. You have jam in your fridge. You have something that's in glass, olives, that you could reuse, wash and reuse that glass over and over again. So I think the misconception is, I think it's a way for naysayers to detract people from actually going green. Now, on the other side of that coin, sustainable living is hard. It's not expensive. It's hard because society is not set up to help us succeed at all. We fail at recycling. We fail at waste. And we have lots of really good lobby groups in this country, the plastic groups, as an example, telling us that recycling is working, telling us that bioplastics are going to be the next thing, and that is just simply not the case. So I think we need to reshift from that it's more expensive to that it's more challenging, but it absolutely is not more expensive, 1000%.
And challenging, though, still gives us the result we're looking for. So it's worth it to pursue that. I mean, at least I believe that. So can you talk about how your book approaches sustainability room by room? What are some unique tips for areas like the kitchen, bathroom, or living room?
Well, first off, I wanted people to understand the impact each room has on your home. You don't think of laundry and climate change, but how is your laundry affecting climate change? So in each chapter, so the laundry chapter, the cleaning chapter, the kitchen chapter, the bedroom, the fast furniture we talk a lot about, the bedroom, I want people to first understand the impact. So when we look at something like fashion, for example, the chemicals that are in our clothing, the toxic chemicals that we're wearing against our skin every single day, this is not like hearsay. These are facts. This is proven. There's lots of documentation on the things that I talk about in my book. So I want people to understand the impact, and then I provide solutions. So in the cleaning chapter, for example, I'm a very big proponent of making your own cleaning products. They are extremely effective and they are very cheap. And once you start doing it, you will not go back. You don't need a cleaning product for everything in your home, for the floors, the walls, the toilet, everything. We've become disinfectant, cleaning rogue. We just kind of go rogue in our homes. We don't need to do that. Things that are easy to make, all-purpose cleaners, super easy to make. Dish soap, which we spend a lot of money on, very easy to make. Hand soap, very easy to make. Body wash, so easy to make. And you need simple ingredients. You need baking soda, vinegar, Castile soap, essential oils, soul suds. In the book, in the cleaning chapter, I highlight exactly what a green cleaning caddy should look like. What should you actually have in your green cleaning caddy? And then in the book, I also dispel a lot of misconceptions. So for example, mixing baking soda and vinegar. Those two things are beautiful on their own, but they're not so great together. And we get a lot of this online where they mix the two together and you get all this foaming action. Once that foaming action is done, the way those two, the acidity and the pH balance of those two things together, when they mix, it just becomes soapy water. So baking soda is very good with Castile soap, for example. Vinegar is really good on its own. Also introducing hydrogen peroxide in the home as an alternative to bleach, which we know is extremely harmful to our health, as well as the health of the environment. Doesn't matter what the company says. It's not a healthy thing to have in your home. And honestly, clean and scent don't go together. People think that if your home smells clean, oh, it must be clean if it smells like bleach. Bleach is not a cleaner. It's a disinfectant. So you have to clean first, then disinfect. So there's so many misconceptions around cleaning. So in the book, I highlight ways to take steps. Fashion, for example, is so complicated. How do you navigate ethical fashion? So I really break that down in the book. These are the kinds of things you should be looking on at the label. These are the kinds of certifications you need to be on the lookout for. This is how to avoid greenwashing. So there's a lot of greenwashing in all of those spaces.
It's very stressful being a consumer if you want to do the right thing. You really do have to put a lot of investigation, and the market is flooded with so-called green products. So how can consumers discern genuine eco-friendly options from those that are greenwashing?
Well, a few rules of thumb. So it's hard to answer that in every room because everything is different.
Right.
We could talk about fashion. We could talk about cleaning. Each one is a little bit different. If you have a large company, so for example, let's say Clorox, right? So Clorox owns bleach. They also have an eco-cleaning product called the Green or something, Clorox Green. So for me, the ingredients might be okay, but it's still coming in a plastic bottle. That plastic bottle is still manufactured using fossil fuels. So the plastic industry is what drives. When you think of how does my laundry or how does my cleaning, caddy affect climate change, we have to take a step back and look at the whole product, not just what's inside it, right? So that's one flag is that a big company that, sells a conventional toxic product is selling something more eco-friendly. That for me is always a flag. We can look at H&M, for example, and their conscious collection. If you dig a little bit deeper, you can see that that's mixed fibers. There might be like 5% organic cotton and linen and 95% elastane or some kind of synthetic man-made product. That cancels that product. It doesn't mean because it has 5% organic content that makes it eco-friendly. So that's a huge flag as well. any kind of recycling claims by any company that produces plastic. So Coca-Cola, for example, they have a big thing right now, bioplastics, and recycling is the answer. It's okay to buy all our plastic bottles. Just make sure you're recycling them. We know that the recycling rates are very low. We know that. Mm-hmm. And that's not because the recycling goes, when you put stuff in the recycling, let's say in Toronto, it does go to the recycling facility. People think that it just gets shipped somewhere else. It doesn't. But it's because consumers aren't recycling properly is part of the problem, that everything that's in the bin, if it shouldn't be there, can taint the whole bin. So we have a real issue. So greenwashing, any claims that can't be, what's the word I'm looking for? Proven. So for example, if they claim this product has this amount of organic content in, you need to read the label and see how much. It should be, the majority should be organic content, and the rest should be the minority, as an example. Also claims like eco-friendly, green, go green, natural, organic. All of these terms mean absolutely nothing in the big picture. So it's important for consumers to dig a little deeper. But yes, it is challenging. And that's why I wrote my book, because I wanted people to have a handbook that they could literally just open up on any chapter and just be like, where was that again? Oh, yes. So I've made it easy for people to navigate, because I've been doing this for so long and I see how hard it is for people to navigate. And greenwashing, anything that claims to be eco, I always take it with a grain of salt, no matter who's claiming it. And then I dig a little bit deeper to see, okay, is this really eco-friendly? We tend to just see an advertising and believe everything we see.
You talk about small steps, eventually bringing about a big change. What's one small step you believe every household could implement today to significantly reduce their environmental footprint?
To compost at home. And composting.
I feel like I'm winning. I do that. Yay.
People get mad at me because they're like, well, I live in an apartment building. We don't have formal waste pickup. I live in a condo. I live in a small space, all that kind of stuff. So yes, at one time it was very difficult for people who didn't have an official green bin program like we have here in Toronto and Vancouver, Montreal, these big cities in Toronto and other parts of the world. But there are options now for people. So I'm a big proponent of 3 different kinds of composting ways in an apartment or small building. Number one is through vermicomposting. So vermicomposting is with worms, with red wigglers. And we need to get past the ick factor of worms. They don't get out of the bin. They come in a bin. They stay in the bin. They never get out. They don't want to eat you. They don't want to bite you. They just want to eat food that you give them. They poop it out, and you have this wonderful soil that you can then add to your personal garden indoors. Maybe you have plants on your balcony outdoors. Can you develop a community in your apartment where you give away compost? That kind of compost, you can't pay for it. It's so good, So that's one option. The second option is something called a bokashi bin. Now, bokashi bin is a Japanese style of a fermentation process where you put food into a bin. And the good thing with this system is you can put anything in it. The worms are a little bit more sensitive, citrus and those kinds of things. So you have to really develop a symbiotic relationship with your worms. It's a wonderful thing to do with kids. The bokashi living, you put everything in, it ferments over a period of 2 weeks. During that fermentation process, you have the opportunity to use a little spout in the end of the bin to get what's called worm tea, compost tea, which is amazing to add to your flowers. Then you have to bury that, and there's a whole process to it. And the third one, where we're seeing massive innovation in the space, which is the pricier one, but when you realize how it helps you reduce food waste, and the more food waste we reduce, the more money we save, and it's better for everybody because we know food security is a major issue. So these are machines that you plug into an outlet. They're called, some of them are kitchen composters, some of them are called kitchen appliances. The one I'm referring to is from a Canadian company called Lomi. They have a machine called the Bloom. And the reason why they developed this machine was because the original company is a company called Pila, and they actually made the first ever compostable, biodegradable phone case. Now, the problem with those kinds of bioplastics is that there's nowhere to put them in our facilities. So when you spend more money on compostable and biodegradable items, they can't be put in the recycling bin like most people think, or the compost bin like most people think. they go in the garbage. So don't waste your money on bioplastics. Just please don't. They go to the same place. But what Pila did is they developed a machine that takes certain bioplastics, specifically their phone case, because they want people to actually be able to have a phone case that is biodegradable and break down. So this is a phenomenal machine that you put in your home. After a few hours, you have amazing soil that then you can use inside and outside of the home. So composting is one way. And they also have an app that you can connect to, where you can actually track how much food you're wasting. And then if you're wasting less, it tells you, also gives you kind of a calculator on what your environmental footprint is, your carbon footprint when it comes to the amount of food that you're wasting. So how do you get paid for any of these companies? These are products that I've used in my home. I started with vermicomposting years and years and years ago because we didn't have composting in our apartment. And now I use the Lomi machine. So there are options, and composting is important because when we put food in the garbage can, it ends up in landfill. And as it breaks down and it rots, it gives off methane gas. And methane gas is about 25 times more potent than CO2. Both of those are very, very potent greenhouse gas emissions that we know contribute and exacerbate global warming.
Well, that you just made my day. I have a compost machine in my kitchen called a Taro that I use every single day.
Amazing.
It is my favorite appliance in my house because I hated composting. I hated the bugs and everything, but this is perfect. I use it every single day, and it's beautiful compost for my garden. Come the spring, I just keep it in a big bucket downstairs. It's perfect.
Yeah.
So thank you for all of these tips. This was really invaluable information that you shared. So I want people to be able to get the Bible, get the handbook you've put out there for them on living this sustainable lifestyle. Where can they do that, and where can they keep up with you?
So I'm on Instagram, just my name, Candice Batista. On the web, I'm theecohub.com. So I have a website with a lot of the information that I have in my book is on my website, but I dig a little bit deeper in my book, much deeper actually, just because it's all in one place. People tend to kind of jump in and out online. And the book is available anywhere books are sold. So in Canada, Amazon.ca, Indigo, most small little bookstores carrying it. And in the US, it would be Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble. So anywhere you buy your books and podcasts, there's audiobooks available of it as well. So it's very easy to find. Just type it into Google and it'll appear.
All right. Fantastic. I'm going to put a link for this as well in the blog post that goes out with the podcast next week. Thank you, Candice, for joining me. This was great.
Thank you for having me. I'm so appreciative.
Hi, I'm Steve Yerko.
And I'm Tara Sands. Now available from Maji Media is our new podcast, 4Kids Flashback. 4Kids is the company who brought you the English dub of Pokemon in the late 90s and so many other shows like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Shaman King, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Kirby, the infamous One Piece dub, and so many more.
We'll be talking to the people who worked at 4Kids. Actors, directors, writers, editors, producers, engineers, you get the point. And hopefully get the answers to questions both you and I have about the company.
I actually worked there as a voice actor on some of the shows.
And I was a kid watching the shows and remember way more than Tara does.
And thank God for that. Steve is actually a professional storyboard artist, which gives some really unique insights into anime and animation. Subscribe today wherever you get your podcasts. That's the number 4 Kids Flashback.
It's time for Saturday Night at the Movies with Anne Brodie. And Anne, I feel like the very first movie we're going to talk about today, I feel like this one's a bit of a tearjerker. We grown now?
You know, it's not sad. What it is, it's so beautiful and lyrical that it makes your heart swell. It's sad at the end when these two boys are separated, when one of them has to move. But okay, so it's set in Cabrini Green, as you know, that was a notorious all black enclave in Chicago, where there were really high crime rates, really tough law enforcement, and it was just a miserable thing. They tore it down in 2011. Anyhow, so we have these two kids. I think they're maybe 8 years old. Two friends, Malik and Eric, and they are just fun-loving, great kids. They've got good parents. They live in extreme poverty, but, life's pretty good. They love to jump on mattresses, closest they can get to God. and, and one day they skip school and they go to the Art Institute, and they're just so wowed by the portraits and paintings that they see. I mean, that's a great thing. That, skip school, go to the museum. Who would have thought of it? So yes, they see a lot of trouble in Cabrini Green, of course, and the parents are desperately worried that day when they go to the museum, because recently a 7-year-old boy was shot and killed, and this happened in real life. Dantrell Davis, whose mother actually gave information to the script writers. So they just have this wonderful life that is so deep and profound, and they ask each other the big questions. And then one day, Malik's mother is moving out of poverty into a good job in Peoria, so they're going to be separated. And that's the sad bit, but it's just such a beautiful film.
Yeah, it looks like it's really going to tug on the heartstrings.
Yeah.
I was quite moved by the short clip that I did see. Let's move on to After the Flood. As a recent addict now to British mysteries, this one looks really good.
It is, and it's on BritBox. So yes, a town in England is flooded because of obviously climate change, and it's devastating. And that to me is the dominating theme of the film, what it does to a village. There's bodies everywhere. And there's one instance when little wee babies being rushed down a river. A man jumps in to save it, and then he manages to hand it off to someone on the shore. Then he's swept 7 miles down the river by this flood, but he survives. So anyway, the central character is Joanna Marshall, played by Sophie Rundle, and she's a police officer. Now, the day before the flood, she discovered a body that was murdered somewhere else and put there, I guess, so the flood would obscure him for a while. But so she's on that. And she's also going door to door looking for bodies. And she's like 8 months pregnant. And she's a real symbol of can-do spirit. So she looks into this dead man in the underground parking lot, finds his sister in France through DNA, and learns that he died 10 years earlier. So what the heck? So it's a murder mystery, and also it's a warning about what can happen to us in climate catastrophe. Wow, it's very, very sobering, and it's very good, well written. The pacing is great, and the interaction of the community is the strongest thing. The first thing the community does is start to put together food for everybody else, even as they mourn all these losses. So it's quite unusual.
Yeah, multiple themes running through that series. So I'm looking forward to it. All right, the next one I want to talk about is Shard Lake.
Yes, this is pretty cool. Now it's on Hulu. If you can actually hook up to Hulu from Canada, and it's on Disney Plus in a while. So it's set in 1536 in Thomas Cromwell's office. Now he's the lawyer to the King Henry VIII, and he is trying to help the king destroy the Roman Catholic Church in Britain. So what they're doing is they're closing all the Benedictine monasteries, sometimes with violence and sometimes just whatever it takes, in order to begin the Church of England, so that Henry can divorce his wife and marry another. So, tacky beginnings. But Matthew Shardlake is a lawyer serving Thomas Cromwell, and he sent to one of the Benedictine monasteries to investigate some deaths that have happened there, all very suspicious. Now, this series is based on C.J. Sampson's best-selling Tudor-era mystery novels, and it's quite gripping. And many of the characters that they have actually existed. So it's interesting to see how politics and violence connected to the king, and to the common folk, to see what lengths the king would go to get what he wanted, and the devastation that he left behind. Very, very interesting.
All right. Awesome. I actually love period drama. So this one, one looks really entertaining too. So, all right, Anne, thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Clare Blackwood, a prominent figure in the world of political satire, to What She Said. Based in Toronto, Clare is not only a writer for Canada's foremost satire website, The Beaverton, but also the creator, writer, producer, and host of Late Night in Canada. Her comedic prowess and insightful commentary on current events have garnered widespread acclaim and many, many laughs. So join us as we delve into the realm of political satire, discussing Clare's approach to crafting satire, experiences with backlash, and sources of inspiration. Welcome to What She Said, Clare.
Thank you so much. That was such a nice, flattering introduction. I'm not used to people being on the internet being so nice to me.
Oh, we're gonna talk about that. Definitely, we're gonna get to that. But can you start by sharing your approach to crafting satire, particularly how you integrate sort of current events and social commentary into comedic writing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I got into this because I love comedy and I love yelling at politicians, because I believe that as a tax-paying citizen, that is my God-given right. And so when I joined the Beaverton, and I give them so much of the credit, like my editors and fellow writers at the Beaverton, they really, really helped me hone my satire and my headlines, and just help me become better at it. My editors take no shit, and they are quite happy to just be like, no, that doesn't work. Like, here's how to make it work. So they are wonderful sources of information. I think my general rules for writing satire is you have to make sure that for the most part, it's not a joke that's been done a billion times. You're always punching up at the right things, punching down at the right things. You're not punching down on good things. I think that one's a really important one. Claire's rules to satire is if something good happens from a shitty politician, maybe don't write a scathing political satire article about that. I think that doesn't help as much. You keep it short and punchy, you keep it topical, you want to have a strong POV so people can immediately tell what's going on. And then sometimes my favorite kind of stuff is just really, really dumb and fun things. In which at the Beaverton, we have a week called Dumb Week, and we just, all the headlines that throughout the year we have laughed at and gone, that's too dumb. We just publish them at the end of the year. So yeah, those are my general kind of rules that I think about when I write my articles. And I found that they're good rules for life.
I don't know if you've ever thought about your rules before or not, but your rules are actually a good guide for life in general. Punch up at the right things, punch down at the right things. These are all good rules in general. Criticism, though, often accompanies satire, as I'm sure you're aware. Can we talk about backlash for a little bit? Do you receive a lot of it? Is this something you've noticed has escalated over the years, especially recently?
Oh, you mean with Mr. Musk's Twitter? Yes. I have dealt with my fair share of, I think, when you are a woman who has opinions, and especially political opinions on the internet, you become kind of a lightning rod for all of the worst men in the world who have a keyboard and access to it. So, I mean, it's one of those things that, yes, occasionally I will go viral and, or not. Or I'll just have an opinion about, God, you mentioned the name Para Polyev on Twitter in any sort of negative light, and you just get hundreds of people, mostly dudes, yelling at you. And I've experienced everything from, death threats via email to people going on my Facebook and finding so many of my female friends and sending them awful messages. And, that guy was a Nazi from PEI. So I think we got him kicked off of Facebook. But it's one of those things that I think, as long as it's directed towards me, I really don't care, because they're all just jerks typing from their mother's basement in Alberta. I'm not worried about them. I don't like it when they come for people I know, which has happened, and I've had to take a lot of information off the internet because of it. which is frustrating. And I definitely have times where I'm like, is this worth it? Is it worth, taking this shot at Polyev when I know that his jackals are just going to immediately jump down my throat and I'm going to have to spend the next 2 days dealing with emails and messages. And yes, it is only getting worse. I think in the realm of Twitter, at least, you can see now the second that a post gets made about climate change, about transphobia, about queer issues, it's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of blue tick idiots who, pardon that word, but like just jerks who have nothing better to do with their time than try to deny it. It's exhausting.
Well, it is exhausting, which leads me to my next question. How do you maintain a sense of humor in light of all of that?
I enjoy poking the bear. It's fun making fun of people. And I think it's just because they can't, I mean, God, this is, knock on wood, but they can't hurt me. They're just online. I don't care. I'll run circles around them if I can. And also I have a lot of wonderful people who send me wonderful messages that are encouraging and friendly and kind. And I just kind of think like, those are the people to focus on.
Yeah, I don't ever want you to go away. The only reason I actually go to X right now is to catch, your tweets and a few other people that I know. I largely just backed off of the platform altogether. Satire,
it's
though,
entirely understandable.
And satire, though, has a really unique power to provoke thought and shape public opinion. So what do you believe is the potential impact of satire on society and politics? Or are you trying to move the needle in one way?
I think that's a good question. And I think a lot about this personally, because I think a lot of left-wing comedy tends to become its own echo chamber. And I have issues with that in terms of like, we're all just making jokes for ourselves, being like, ha ha ha, look how funny we are. Look how much better we are than the other side. And we're all just kind of circle jerking these jokes, pardon me. But like, I think the most important thing is that the world is very bleak right now. And I think laughter is important. I think it's important to be able to find the little light in things to stop us from going insane. And keeping in mind that it's really important to make fun of both sides, because both sides absolutely can be made fun of. And it gets repetitive if you're just shitting on one right-wing politician the whole time. It doesn't help that they do more stupid stuff than some others, but that's fine. I think that's what political satire is the best at. It's just making people laugh. I don't generally think that somebody's going to read a Beaverton article I write who's like a right-wing fuck Trudeau conservative from Alberta and go, you know what? This is going to make me change my ways. Like, I have no delusions about that. But if I can give someone a good laugh and make somebody think about something in a different light at all, then I think my job is done.
Who do you look to for inspiration in the world of comedy and satire? Who do you follow on X or Threads or wherever, whatever platform that keeps you thinking and laughing?
Oh my gosh. I think Rachel Gilmore's doing a fabulous job. I mean, if you're on Twitter, you know her, and she puts up with 1,000 times more harassment than I do, and she's smart and quick and very good at her job. My fellow Beaverton writer Scott Martin is great. He's super hardcore leftist, bless his heart, and fights for good causes and doesn't back down and has very strong opinions. And I appreciate that. Like a lot of journalism, I just follow a lot of journalists who are great. They have more guts than I do. I get to sit behind my computer and make my little jokes, and they actually have to go out there and, and do the thing and be around the people and do that kind of work, which I just don't know if I have the spine for. It's like I couldn't go into politics. I would just cry all the time. So hats off to those people. I love watching late night shows. That's my jam. I love the kind of stuff that Jordan Klepper does. I just follow a lot of people who write for late night shows, and I think they're brilliant. And I try to learn as much from them as I can.
Any new characters or any new sort of projects on the horizon for you right now?
Yeah, well, I finally finished my goal of creating a character who was I had in my head to do like a perpetually stressed personal assistant of Pierre Polyev, who's just going to, from now on, have to deal with his nonsense stuff that he does. So it's been fun I did my first little video as her, and her name is Mandy, bless her heart. And I think it's something I'm going to keep doing because it's fun. It's fun. And I'm sure he's going to give me so much more material.
I'm pretty sure it will be endless. We've got a long way to go to the next election. So,
don't remind me.
And he's already been obviously platforming and running now for what it feels like forever, but
yeah,
easily 2 years. Claire, thank you so much for joining me today. I want people to be able to get the laughs that I get out of following your content. So where is the best place for them to follow along and keep up with you?
On Twitter. It's just at Clare Blackwood. That's where I make all of my jokes. I forget about Instagram and we don't talk about Facebook. So yeah, just on my Twitter, and then my contact information is there, and you can contact me as long as it's not either a dick pic or a death threat or something equally as fun.
Excellent. All right, Claire, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
When it comes to compassion, women often have heaps for other people, but very little for themselves. It's an issue we need to address. So in this next segment, we're going to explore the transformative power of self-compassion with Steph Kelly of Copper Thread Coaching, a renowned life and business coach who empowers individuals to embrace authentic success and well-being. With her unique approach that blends play and empowerment, Steph helps clients navigate the delicate balance between ambition and mental wellness. Welcome to What She Said, Steph.
Thanks for having me.
Your approach is really unique, sort of integrating play to lighten the self-help journey. So how has this method proven effective for your clients?
We like to talk about it like the proverbial cheese sauce on the broccoli. You know, like I think we've all seen so many self-help books. We've been to so many team building events. You kind of get tired of it. You're not excited. You're not engaged anymore. By mixing in play and making it a little bit lighter and more accessible, instead of that feeling of like, I have to do it, you can get people to come in and look forward to it and open that gateway and make it feel a bit lighter and a little bit less like heavy lifting and more like something you want to do and want to engage with. So play is really the gateway that we use to invite people in to sort of see what's in there and be curious.
So you've mentioned that your initial concept of self-compassion was somewhat sarcastic and skeptical. So can you walk us through your evolution from being sarcastic and skeptical to embracing it?
Yeah, for sure. So I am a recovering type A people pleaser, sort of perfectionist type of human, as lots of women are. And I've gone through most of my life motivating myself with sort of guilt, shame, threats of what will happen if I'm imperfect. And it worked really well until it didn't, and I burnt out, and I had to figure out a new way. And I was introduced to self-compassion. And I'd say for maybe the first year that I was learning, I just called it self-compassion, because even saying the words made my skin crawl, like it just felt icky. I think as women, we're not really socialized to be kind to ourselves, right? It's just not, we're to be there for others and we're to be perfect all of the time. And it just doesn't come naturally to us. So I started learning, I started using it. The beauty of self-compassion is it actually doesn't matter whether you believe what you're saying to yourself or not. It starts the process off. So I begrudgingly started being nice to myself, saw a few of those changes and went, oh, okay, maybe there is something to this. And then I could actually engage with the process, leaned in. And honestly, it changed my life. It changed how I see myself, the world, my relationships. And so I went and I got the sort of full certification from Dr. Kristen Neff to be able to teach other people how they can be nice to themselves without hating it and having to say self-compassion.
I love that. And I am known for doing that as well. So let's debunk some myths then. You say there are 3 that we need to sort of really take a closer look at. Do you want to address those?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's tons of them, but I think the big 3, especially for women, is firstly, that self-compassion is going to make you weak. I know for myself, I had sort of visions of like lying on the couch wrapped in self-pity and just never doing anything and not being able to handle hard things. The research really, really clearly shows that this isn't the case. One of my favorite studies is out of the University of Arizona, and they did this enormous study where they figured out that people who were, when they were speaking about their divorces, using self-compassionate languages tended to fare better, not only at the time of the divorce, but 9 months later. And as you all know, this is, one of the more difficult things that a person can navigate. The language that they were using with themselves, the way that they spoke about themselves, about their interactions, they adjusted for all of the factors that may have skewed those results. Your attachment style, whether you tended to be an optimist, if you had mental health struggles. Even with all of those controls, just the self-compassion showed that everybody does better, can handle harder things, is more resilient, is more motivated when they treat themselves with kindness. So you will not become a bump on a log that can't handle hard things, I promise. You'll be more able to manage them.
All right, excellent. And another myth would be about bubble baths and face masks.
This one, okay. So we hear this one a lot when we talk to clients. Sort of one of the first things that I'll ask a client is like, what do you think self-compassion is? What does it mean to you? And a lot of the time you hear sort of typical self-care activities. Well, I could take a bubble bath after a hard day and have a face mask. And like, I love a good face mask, don't get me wrong, but that's not exactly what we're talking about when we say self-compassion. Yes, it has the warm and fuzzy self-talk and the understanding, but it also includes what's called fierce self-compassion. And that's sort of how you treat your system when you're forced to do something really, really overwhelming or really, really hard. So for example, if you take 2 kids and you have 2 kids that are having to take a really, really difficult test that they haven't been prepared for. One kid has a parent who is yelling at them, threatening them about what will happen if they don't do well, demeaning them. The other kid has a parent who is encouraging the opportunity to learn something, regardless of the results, telling them that they are praising them for their effort and the amount of work that they're putting into it, and reminding them that they've done hard things so they can do more hard things. Which kid do you think is going to do better on that test? It's going to be the kid that has someone that's in their corner. And our systems are very much the same. You will do better. You will be more resilient when you are in your own corner, whispering sweet, kind, supportive things to yourself, rather than if you are imperfect, everything will fall apart. And it's something that you'll see. It happens really quickly when you do this work, that change, seeing that threat sort of disappear and having that resilience. It's a very quick turnaround, which is nice. So, don't skip the bubble baths and face masks, but also that's not the whole picture.
Yeah. And we've sort of been marketed to that when it comes to that, by other companies out there. You can be kind to yourself if it's walking barefoot in the grass or going for a hike. It's going to look different for everybody. I think one of the other myths, though, that I think we should address is that there is a difference between self-esteem and self-compassion. Can you sort of expand on that a little bit?
So this one's my hot take. This is my particular soapbox. We, especially as women, have been sold for, the last 30 or 40 years, this story about self-esteem and how we need to build self-esteem, how important it is. Self-compassion, in my opinion, and in the research, shows that it's so much more superior to self-esteem. Almost all of the women that we work with struggle with the feeling that no matter how hard they work and what they do, it's never good enough, ever, ever, ever. They're never enough for themselves. They're never enough for everybody else. On the flip side, when you have a focus on self-esteem, you can develop what's known as a self-enhancement bias, which essentially means you have a tendency to sort of overestimate your abilities. You are funny, you are prettier, you are smarter than others. You put yourself a leg above. And then we end up in this weird spot where we kind of flip-flop between those two things, comparing ourselves to others and deciding how we feel about us based on where we fall on that ranking compared to other people, or just telling ourselves that no matter what we do, it's not enough. Self-esteem depends on outside forces, your finances, your looks, your social standing, whatever that thing is, which means it can be taken away from you. You can lose your job, you can lose your money, you can lose your looks at any given moment. And all of a sudden you're left with this sort of crisis of identity. Who am I and why am I worthy and what am I doing? When you have self-compassion, yeah, you may still lose your job and it may still be deeply painful, but it doesn't threaten your sense of self. You know that you can support your system and navigate through whatever waters you happen to be paddling through at that moment and still be okay. It also takes away sort of that need to engage in social comparison, the constant wonder of what other people are thinking about you, the mean girl effect where you're making someone feel smaller to make you feel bigger because you make you feel bigger. You don't need somebody else to do that. So I vote for self-compassion every day of the week.
So I know that people are listening to this and some people will be having just, a regular day, feeling sort of okay about things. But there's going to be somebody listening to this right now who's going to be extraordinarily low. And when you're in that spot, I know when I'm in that spot, that there's not much you could tell me to move me forward. What would you say to somebody right now who's feeling that way?
Self-compassion at its base is really just being willing to say to yourself that this is in fact as hard as you think it is, and that anyone else that is in an identical situation to you would be going through the same thing, and that that's okay. Um, you don't when you're in the low place, you don't have a lot to lose, and you've already tried probably being pretty mean to yourself and threatening yourself and feeling that anxiety. It is worth trying, even for a minute, even if you have to call it self-compassion as you do it, just to see, because like I said, it is so quick and it is so valuable. And the things that you're doing, you're treating yourself how you treat the people that you love. And when you see that distance between how you speak to you versus how you speak to the person you love the most, it's shocking. And that's a really, really big motivator and a really, really big sort of thread to pull to figure out how you can be kinder.
Well, this sounds like a skill that we should all be working on. So I want people to be able to keep up with you because you're quite active on TikTok. You're sharing pretty much everywhere and you work with people individually. So where's the best place for them to connect with you and keep up?
So we are on social media. We post every day all kinds of practical tips and tools that you can use in self-compassion, all kinds of other things that will sort of take you from where you are to where you want to be. We are Copper Thread Coaching, and if you search any social media, we'll be there, or our website is copperthreadcoaching.com.
All right, incredible. Steph, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Candice. It was lovely.
In today's final interview, I'm joined by Willie Poll, a proud Métis author and passionate advocate for Indigenous education. Willie has recently authored a charming children's book titled My Little Ogochida, an Indigenous lullaby, which celebrates the profound love and hopes Indigenous parents hold for their children. Willie, it's a pleasure to have you back, especially in time for our Mother's Day show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure to be here.
Can you share what inspired you to write My Little Ogochida and how your role with the Moose Hide campaign influenced the themes of this book?
Absolutely. So I actually wrote this book shortly after Moose Hide Campaign Day a couple years ago. And I had been watching Raven, who is the co-founder of the campaign, and she's a young Indigenous woman. And at the time, she had her little one with her who was, just young, like a few years old. And she was also pregnant with her second. And so she was speaking in front of like thousands of people at Moose Hide Campaign Day. And her little one was up on stage beside her, and she had her, her big belly. And it was just like the most beautiful moment to see a young Indigenous child looking up at such a powerful matriarch who's changing the world. And I just thought how incredible that, Raven is raising these little ones in these spaces where they're seeing beauty and brilliance of Indigenous people. And I just thought it was one of the strongest moments I'd ever seen.
And the title, My Little Ogochida, refers to a warrior, correct?
Yeah. So Ogichida means warrior in Anishinaabe-Moan. And so a lot of the story is sort of reframing what a warrior is and how we see a warrior. And so, it talks to things like a warrior is somebody who, is carrying on knowledge and doing art and picking medicines and all of those things, and just being in this world that wasn't meant for you, in this world that has become so colonized and just set up for your faults. Just being here makes you a warrior. And so I think it's just a really beautiful story to help Indigenous kids see that their existence truly is a blessing.
Tell me about the illustrations, because I know the last time the illustrations were a really important part of your book. And so tell me about the illustrations in this book.
So Hallie Pitchett is an Anishinaabe artist who did the artwork for the story. And she is also an Indigenous mother. So I feel like she brought a lot of her own story and love into the story and really made it her own. I always say that with children's books, it becomes really 50% the illustrators after, right? They put so much into it. And I just think that I couldn't have imagined anything this beautiful when I wrote it. It's done in a woodland style art design. There's a lot of spreads, with the mom carrying the child, and there's, like Indigenous parenting techniques within it, like the moss bag and traditional birthing practices. It's just like, I think it's so, it's one of my more beautiful books for sure. I absolutely love it.
And how do you see My Little Agochida serving as a gift or a tool for mothers and families to celebrate and teach about Indigenous culture and values?
Yeah, I think that a lot of, when I wrote the book, I definitely wrote it for Indigenous parents. Like, I wanted them to read it and feel like they are enough and like they're doing enough. And even if, you're not connected to culture or you don't know your language, like so much has been lost through the residential school system, and just the ongoing, genocide to Indigenous people. And so I think that I really wanted, parents never feel like they're enough. Like, I feel like parents are always, especially moms, like, am I doing enough? Am I doing it right? Am I doing this? And I really just wanted them to sort of read it and know that, like, they are enough and they're raising the next generation of warriors and change makers. And I think that, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, like, that's a really powerful message to know that this is a beautiful experience. And I think that, we don't focus enough on those little moments within it.
Yeah, I think that is a message that applies to every mother around the globe. So perfect. If people want to find your book, Willie, or connect with you and keep up with you, where can they do that?
Absolutely. So you can find, Willie Poll on most socials. The book is available anywhere books are sold. If it's not in store, they can order it in all the big major places like Indigo, Amazon, that kind of thing. And obviously also your local independent bookstores. But yeah.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today, Willie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If today's podcast resonated with you, spread the word and share the inspiration. Don't forget to hit subscribe on What She Said across your favorite podcast platforms. Crave more? Join my vibrant community by signing up for my newsletter at whatshesaidtalk.com, and let's get social on Facebook, Instagram, and X at What She Said Talk. Dive into my world a little deeper on TikTok and Threads at Candice Said. And for those who love the airwaves, catch me weekly on 105.9 The Region, Blast the Radio, and 107.7 Pulse FM. Until next time, keep making waves and remember, your voice matters.
What happens when we play outside? We become healthier, both mentally and physically. We become more creative and more focused. We connect with nature, each other, and ourselves. Let's Take This Outside, a new podcast hosted by me, Marianne Iveson, an aspiring outdoor athlete and nature lover. I speak to athletes, outdoor professionals, and scientists about their connection to nature, how it affects their performance, and everyday life. Let's Take This Outside, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, and at letstakethisoutside.ca. Come on a journey like no other, where you will discover many roads that will lead you to a happier, healthier, and more stress-free life. And the beauty is, you don't need any vacation time for this adventure. The journey will come to you. Join Avery Rich on your very own journey into yoga. Along the way, she will demystify yoga poses and guide you into a yoga posture or short sequence, all in less than 15 minutes. You have nothing to lose but stress. The Journey into Yoga podcast. It's not for people who like yoga, it's for people who don't like yoga. Follow or subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or at averyrich.com.
Another Sound Off Media Company podcast.